We are.
Are we live?
Yes, we are.
All right. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you so much for giving an hour of your time for our latest community conversation. I want to just reiterate again that these community conversations are an ongoing initiative that we're really working to develop to provide regular interval updates to our community about issues that are current, that are relevant, that involve our greater community, and to provide our community with an opportunity to ask questions and to provide input on these big issues and these big decisions that are being made. This evening we're going to talk about an important topic, which is very exciting, and it relates to the current construction process for the completion of our new school. And again, that school is conceptualized and scheduled to open next fall. We are still working really hard toward that outcome. And before I introduce my colleague, Assistant Superintendent Downs, who has, I think, a very informative and interesting presentation to share with everyone tonight, I never miss these opportunities to share just a few highlights of just the latest neat things that are happening. And there really are a lot of them, and I say with all sincerity that a lot of it is due to that community effort and that shared commitment to doing what's best for our students and our community. So we recently, actually within the last couple of days, found out that our concussion management protocol called Cortex, and it's a program that we use to manage student head injuries, whether they come from sports or other sources of injury, and it really helps students make a healthy return back to not only athletics but also to academics. It's a pretty innovative program. It's gotten a lot of positive attention, and it recently was selected to be recognized with an Arizona School Board Association Golden Bell Award, and that will be presented at the Arizona State Conference for Innovation in Education. And just gratitude to Dr. Saradactyl and her team and all of our leads at all of our schools for moving that initiative forward that really is impacting our students in a positive way. I'd also like to share, in case you didn't see, I think it was in the Green Valley News, that last weekend the Arizona State Music Association held their state marching band festival, and Saudi, the high school, competed and achieved great excellence. They actually, of all the teams in the state, they achieved the finals, which is called the Super 8, and they'll be competing at Arizona State University in the coming weeks among the last 8 of Arizona marching bands in their division. So congratulations to Mrs. Garcia and the parent boosters and our students and faculty and staff for all the hard work. Marching band is a tremendous undertaking, and it really exemplifies a team effort. So we're very proud of our students in that program. And while we're on the topic of music, we also just found out literally yesterday evening that the band director at Walnut Grove High School, Mr. Ryan Carl Ogren, was selected as a finalist for the prestigious Circle K High School Faculty Recognition Program. He's one of a select number, I would guess, half a dozen that are finalists for that award, and Ryan will be recognized at a special banquet at the University of Arizona in the spring, and we congratulate him for what we know to be true, which is that he exemplifies the highest standards of excellence, teaching excellence, and just tireless dedication to doing great things for our kids. And the last one, I would be remiss if I didn't mention and ask all of you, either joining us on Facebook Live or here in person, to raise your hand if you're one of the 2.5 million people who have seen the dance video of Walden Grove. Hopefully everybody has done that. And that's amazing. And that really is a tribute to Ms. Lopez and all of her amazing students and the support of the community and the district, our board and staff. Again, the spirit of community that brings us together. 2.5 million views, and really some amazing opportunities for that group that are emerging for them to compete and to showcase their talents even at the national level. So we're very excited about that. And so now I'll bring us back to the main focus of this evening's presentation. Last time we talked a little bit about operations and the process of construction, and I extend gratitude to Mr. Downs, our senior administrator overseeing this project, and also our partners at the core construction also at the Swing Associates, our architect. They're working really, really hard to get this done. But an important part of this is the boundaries. We work real hard to build loyalty and community at all of our schools, and people to really feel that they're a part of their school community. And then for the greater good, we build new schools because we grow, and we need to grow and build new space. But it also is a process that in making decisions about how we move students around and designate boundaries and place students in schools, it's something that becomes challenging based upon those factors. And I'm grateful to Scott for the very careful and inclusive and methodical way that he's led this initiative with stakeholders from the different schools, from staff, from parents, from faculty, from administration. It's been, I hope you'll see it's a comprehensive process. It's not done yet, and that's why we're here to kind of talk about the process, look at where we're at, and ask for additional input from the community before moving forward, hopefully to the finish line of making a determination, ideally sometime this fall, but certainly as soon as possible so that we can keep moving forward. So at this, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Mr. Scott Downs, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. Scott.
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. Again, my name is Scott Downs, Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, in charge of construction and human resources in our district. And part of the process of building a new school is figuring out which kids go there and then figuring out which teachers are going to go there. So thank you for the audience members who are joining us here live today and those who are here on Facebook. The agenda and some of the things I want to talk about today, I want to start with the very bottom of this slide where it says the journey is just as important as the destination. In the next 2 minutes, I can tell you what our ultimate conclusions have been so far without some public input. But to kind of understand what our committee was thinking and the journey that they went on, we'll answer a lot of questions that I think might come up at the end of what did you guys think about this and what about that. So some of this presentation is how we got to where we are, which again, I think will answer a lot of questions. But we're going to talk about the current boundaries, historical process in our district for boundary realignment and feeder school patterns. Kind of talk a little bit about the committee selection and guiding principles that committee came up with. The journey of the consolidated proposals and the plans themselves, and then quickly talk about staff requirements if these proposals were to go forward and what that means for staffing. And at the very end, the most important part of this evening is to answer questions and or take some suggestions. So the current boundaries and historical process and feeder school pattern, there's a map in front of you. If you were to look at the very center of Rancho Cerrita in blue, that is the Copperview Elementary School boundary. About 560 kids come from that area, kindergarten through 5th grade. And I point that out specifically because when we look at the Onza Trail boundary, which is in green, it encompasses the blue area. So it is important, and I'll talk about it a little bit in a future slide, is anything in the blue area is elementary, Copperview Elementary School, but middle school is Onza Trail School. And that will become important in a future slide. Everything that I didn't talk about is basically main campus, which is the northern part of Rancho Cerrita, and basically everything down off of La Cañada, off to the west, which is the ranches. The current tracking system in the feeder school pattern right now, I talk about them as the main campus and the off-campus track, but we have the main campus in blue, which is SPS, SIS Middle School and Cerrita High School. Socre from Amado, Arizona feeds into the middle school. And the off-campus track, which is Copperview, again on the previous slide, feeds into Onza for middle school. Obviously Onza has its own components of K-5 as well, and then they feed into Walden Grove High School. The past historical process in our district, and kind of you think about how our district was 15 years ago, is all the students came to the main campus. So as we built new schools, we thought, well, if at all possible, let's try to scoop kids off of the main campus and put them in a neighborhood school and hopefully never touch them again. It doesn't always work out perfect because you can never read the crystal ball perfectly and what's going to happen 5 years from now. But that's kind of been our protocol in an attempt to move as few students as possible. Just to give you a little bit of more knowledge, our school district boundary for all schools is that red line. On the east side, it's Wilmont Road, goes up to Lombard Road on the north. goes down to just a little bit south of Walmart, or the road where Manuel's restaurant is on. And it kind of circles around, which you can't see on the map, goes around Green Valley and encompasses Amado and Arivaca as well. Our current schools are the red dots. You have Walden Grove way off to the right-hand side or east side, 4 dots for the main campus, Anza, and the blue dot is the approximate location of the new school. Where do the majority of our students live? If I could put 2 circles around where the majority of our students live, they would mostly live in the green circle or blue circle. That does not mean we have a lot of students off east and west in the ranches, like I said, and from Amado, Arizona. But the conglomerate of students are either Rancho Cerrito, which is the green, and off of La Cañada and near Walmart in the blue circle. And what schools do they attend? In the blue circle is Anza, Copperview, Walden Grove, the main campus up on the north. And in the blue circle is basically the main campus. And which students should go to the new school, and our committee quickly realized that it doesn't make a lot of sense to take students from the green circle and put them into a school that's close to the blue circle, and vice versa, maybe take kids from the blue circle and bring them up to schools in the green circle. Now, it's not always a perfect alignment, but what we quickly noticed when we started deriving our plans is we didn't want to do that. Also, one of the conversations we had is about neighborhood schools. 15 years from now, when we have 2 or 3 more elementary schools, middle school, high school, is we're probably not going to ship or bus students from every neighborhood to every school, so every part of Cerrito goes to every school. Again, one of our main components of the way that we've grown in our boundary process is we've taken kids, we've scooped them off the main campus and attempted to put them in a neighborhood school and never touched them again. Another question that comes up is, how do you pick the locations of your school, which is not really the point of tonight. But I do want to tell you that when we picked the location of the school, we had an extensive process that we worked in with our architect, and we looked at all the components. The major driving force of picking a location is availability to electric, water, gas, and sewer, and also the timing and the availability to open up the school when you want to. And we looked at a couple of sites with Rancho Cerrito, a couple of sites without Rancho Cerrito, and we looked at some state land, and the land that was available in the time frame that we needed it, and the best package that we thought we could deliver to the students in the community was the green dot. Current new growth in Cerrito, we have Entrada del Rio. I call it the Safari area. It's just behind Safari Park, if you're familiar with Rancho Cerrito. It's going to be 514 new homes. They're only building just over 100 right now, I'm told. But from the ratio that we know, the current students that would come from neighborhoods, we know that that blue area will produce about 216 kindergarten through 8th grade students and 74 high school. And also just east of Cerrito High School, the Entrada La Villita neighborhood, which will be 71 homes, and that will produce 27 students, K-8, and in high school 13. Another area that is growing and is actually building homes right now is just south of Animax Recreation Center. They're going to have 238 homes there total, with about 92 kindergarten through 8th grade students and 48 high school students. And the last area, which we are told is going to be anywhere between now and 5 years, probably towards the end of the 5 years from Rancho Cerrito, is the neighborhood just south of where the new school will be. With those 200 homes, it will produce about 78 students K-8. And this is important to know because when you start to define where your boundaries are going to be, you want to make sure that you have the capacity for those students, even though they're not here yet. You don't want to load up a school with 800 kids and then 3 years down the road you're already at max capacity. So you want to build in some cushion room, for lack of a better word, for those new students that will be coming. Just the general boundary process, as Dr. Valenzuela already articulated, that this is a process and we are only on the second phase, which is in red right now, but we have had a committee initiation, which we picked 15 committee members, and we start to analyze a bunch of different numbers and neighborhoods. Then we are getting feedback through forums in the website, which is where we are now, which is why that's in red. Then we will ultimately give a recommendation to Dr. Valenzuela with possibly a couple of options for the school board to decide. But ultimately, it will be the presentation to the board and their decision. And I have December of 2017. That's when I hope to have a decision and finalized by the governing board. If it goes into January, that will be fine. There's a whole process that comes after the boundary realignment with staffing and figuring out which staff goes to the new school as well. Just want to give a quick glimpse of our boundary committee, and several of them are here today, so I appreciate you guys being here today in person. But as you can see, we have some district administration, some principals, some staff. There's a lot of parents on there, and we are very specific in terms of picking our committee. And I can tell you, we have a parent from every kindergarten through 8th grade school that was on our committee, so we were well represented in the K-8 community in terms of parents. The timeline has been happening so far is we initiated our committee on September 13th. All of our committee meetings are in red, our public forums are in blue, and ultimately, in hopes of December 6th, a presentation to the board and approval. The little yellow star means it's kind of where we are right now, so we're at the second public forum talking about boundary in the school now. We meet next Monday. We plan to have another public forum and tweak and or change some of the things that we hear out of today. We'll meet again and ultimately present to the governing board. The first thing I think that was important for our committee to determine before we started looking at any numbers, any neighborhoods, is we sat down and figured out what's important to our committee, meaning what is important to our community in terms of what are the important things we need to think when we start moving students. And those were the number 6. They're in no particular order. Number 1 doesn't mean it was the most important. But we wanted to move as few students as possible out of existing schools. We want to minimize bus travel time as possible. We want to equally alleviate overcrowding at all schools if possible. Maintain a sense of community within schools and neighborhoods, meaning drawing the lines appropriately so you're not breaking neighborhoods in half. Anticipate the future impacts, which the neighborhoods I've already shared with you, and in hopes of ensuring demographically diverse schools. And one of the things that our committee noticed was when we started talking about this process and coming up with ideas is a lot of those guiding principles were sometimes in conflict with each other. When you're focusing on one, sometimes it unbalanced another guiding principle, meaning if you want to equally alleviate the schools, that probably means you're going to be moving more students. So again, it was very difficult to balance these as we go through. So some of the plans that were developed, this first slide, we had 6 boundaries that were presented to our committee from our committee members. We had some other ones as well. And we put them on a map and made it an overlay to try to figure out, well, just as a committee, where do we see the majority of our thought process is? And every committee member worked independently. They came back to the committee and brought their plan. So they're color-coded by the name of the person that brought the plan forth. And what we quickly derived, which you've already seen in where do students live and what schools that they should go, was a lot of the committee's focus was on the La Cañada area and the Walmart area. Again, trying to get kids to go to the closest school that they attend. I will say as a side note that sometimes people don't understand, why do people in the north part of Rancho Cerrito pass on the trail school to go to the main campus? I just don't understand that. Why doesn't everybody just go to their closest school? And the simple answer for that is, if everyone went to this closest school, probably most of the people would be going to Onza Trail School. And then where would you do with those students between Onza Trail School and the main campus? They're equally balanced between. So it's very difficult to do boundaries, and nothing is ever perfect. But what this slide told our committee was we really started focusing on the La Cañada area. We had 2 committee members, and looking at that previous slide, that came up with the same exact plan, 100% independent of each other. And this was the one that we started to look at in more detail. And what we did is we took all the current students, we moved them up a grade level, we repeated what we knew to be in kindergarten this year, because we don't know exactly what's happening in kindergarten next year, and we came up with a projection. And so the neighborhood that you see on the left, which is right off of La Cañada, and again north of Walmart, this would produce 683 students in the new school right now. And 170 later. The 170 would come from, again, that neighborhood that's directly south of Animax Park, and the new house is being built right next to the school, which would produce 170, which means a total of 853. We've been talking to the community that the capacity of the school is around 750, and we started to realize very quickly when we started to looking at the numbers and students that can fit that it's actually a lot more. I feel very comfortable with 853, looking at the number of classrooms that will be in the school, which we'll look at in a little bit. On the right side of your screen was the thought or attempt to alleviate some of the overcrowding at Onza Trail School. And the thought was, if you were to take that neighborhood and bring it to the main campus, that would take several students out of Onset Trail School. And what Jan did, this is Mrs. Jan Bryson from Copperview Elementary School teacher, is she had picked the furthest neighborhood away in Rancho Cerrito to come to the main campus. Does that make sense? If you're going to bus people and you're not going to take kids who are right next to Anza, bring them to the main campus to alleviate Anza. So she picked the furthest neighborhood away from Anza Trail School and said, let's take that neighborhood to the main campus. Well, what we had described and why I showed you the boundaries before is if you think about this neighborhood in the middle of Rancho, that those kids are K-5 at Copperview Elementary School and middle school at Anza. So if you were to pick, and she had suggested maybe taking one of those neighborhoods, but even if you took two of those neighborhoods in that whole area in green, you'd actually be taking 115 kids out of Copperview and only 69 middle school kids out of Anza. And although that's 69 students out of Anza, if you take 69 students divided by the 9 grade levels that they have, you'd be reducing maybe each grade level by 3 or 4 students. So that reduces class size at Anza, but doesn't really get any more space back. Anza has some special education teachers and English language learner teachers who teach in workrooms, and they're doing a great job at it. But if our attempt to alleviate some of the overcrowding at Anza, we really need to look at a more substantial number than 69 kids to bring out of Anza to actually get some space back. And so quickly we realized, well, probably picking that neighborhood is not going to work. And again, part of our process of discovering what we learned. So if we only go back one slide, if we were to just look at that new school of 683 students and the defined boundary that I have before you, which is one of the components of the plan, a proposed plan or thought process right now, those 683 students, this basically tells you how many students would be at each grade level and how many teachers are needed. And I don't have my pointer here, and if you're joining us with Facebook, I'll try to describe this as you see it. But at the very top, you have kindergarten through 8th grade in the total. At the top, which you can see 683 students. The number of teachers in purple, which I know there's a fine line between that gray row and the purple row, I would propose, at least right now, and our district has no certain number of, we only put 18 kids in kindergarten or 22 kids in kindergarten. This is Scott's best human resources guess at appropriate class sizes. We could increase that by 1 or decrease it by 1, but if we were to divide by the number of teachers, in kindergarten, if we had 3 kindergarten teachers at that new school, it would have a class size of 20. In first grade, 60 divided by 3 is 20. And you can see the class size for kindergarten through 5th grade. It's easy to determine class size and the number of staff needed at elementary school because you just take the number of students and divide it by the number of teachers you get your class size. In middle school, I wasn't able to do that because middle school is a very tricky schedule. You have teachers on planning period. So if this was a proposal to go through, I would sit down with Stephanie Silman, our principal at Cerrito Middle School, and Mrs. Robinson, our principal of middle school at Onset Trail School, and really figure out what our staffing would need or look like in the middle school part of this. So left at the main campus, it was again important to figure out how many students would be left and how many teachers would be needed to be left at the new school. We'd have 138 kindergarten at SPS. Again, SPS is the blue row, SIS is the green, and peach is the middle school. You'd have 460 left at SPS, which is on the right-hand side of your screen, 461 at SIS, and 539. Again, not being able to define the middle school staffing, but again, if you took the numbers of teachers that I have in the second blue row across your screen, if you took the 138 kids in kindergarten and divided by 7, you have 19.7 or approximately 20 kids in a class, and that goes all the way through kindergarten through 5th grade. What does that mean overall, which is in the very bottom of your screen? Right now we have current 12 kindergarten teachers at SPS. And if you count the purple boxes, the 3 kindergarten teachers needed at the new school and the 7 teachers needed at left at the main campus, you need a total of 10 kindergarten teachers. And I'm not recommending 10, but divided by the numbers that I did, theoretically we'd have 2 less kindergarten classes in kindergarten. And you never know what's going to go on with kindergarten, so we might recommend to have an extra teacher there. In first grade, we could lose 1 classroom in first grade overall. In second grade, you would need 1. Third grade was a wash, and you need 2 extra classrooms in 4th grade, and in 5th grade it was a wash. Sometimes students don't always move in multiples of 20 or 22 or 24, whatever you're going to define your class size to be. In this case, it worked out relatively nice, because you can see the overall difference in the needed teachers. It was basically a wash. We're not losing any teachers and didn't have to hire any. So that's the new school if we were to take that boundary that I shared with you before. Mrs. Mary McGraw, who was a teacher at Onza Trail School, was the teacher who actually came up with the exact same plan independently from our previous slide. So again, 683 now and 170 for later, which means a total of 853. Now on this slide, Mrs. McGraw had proposed an idea, is that little red triangle that you can see on the bottom of your screen. Those would still be going to the main campus in the previous slide or the previous plan. But the thought was, let's try to send some more students down to Sopri, a wonderful school down there, and put some students in there. And you'll see when we get to the staffing component of that thought process, we're actually saving some teachers. The first question that comes up, and this is going to be a side note, so the next slide is kind of off the topic, but it's a question that always comes up, is, my goodness, you never want to ship kids down to Sopri because it's such a long distance down there. So I spoke with our transportation director, and we found out what is the longest time that a student who lives in the Los Arroyos neighborhood that comes to the main campus, and they have several stops, they spend about 18 minutes on the bus. From McGee Ranch, again from the furthest stop, they have a couple of stops up there, going to SPS is about 25 minutes. And what's interesting, if you take the furthest stop in Rancho Cerrito for any student who goes to Copperview Elementary School, even though they're not traveling a far distance, they have lots of traffic, they have a lot more stops, the bus stops every 100 yards to pick up 5 or 6 more kids, so that travel time is 37 minutes. And if you were to take that Rancho Abrego, which is that red triangle that I just shared with you, and they were to drive to Sopri, our Director of Transportation classifies that as about 35 minutes. So it's not a huge amount of time compared to some of our other routes. Of course, we do have some at 18 and 25, but it is comparative to some of our students at Copperview Elementary School and how much time they spend on the bus. The other thought that Mrs. McGraw came up with was balancing those principles that our committee came up with, was trying to alleviate some of the overcrowding. So one of the ideas that she came up with was taking the area in red, which is Cerrito Heights, and taking them to the main campus. The difference in this plan versus the one that Jan came up with was it took a lot more students. It took 235 kindergarten through 8th grade students, whereas the previous slide for Jan didn't take as many. The net change for all the schools is in the upper right-hand corner, and I didn't do it by grade level, but the net change at the main campus, they'd be losing 683 students to the new school. They'd be gaining 235 students from this red area, and eventually they have the 216 students from the Safari construction, which was the little blue one that's marked on your map now, for a total net loss of 232. It doesn't seem like they're losing a lot, but those 216 students from the Safari construction is eventually going to come in the next couple of years. It's not all at once because they haven't even built one house yet. So we're actually looking at a net loss currently of about 460 to the main campus before the Safari Park comes in. The little yellow area, which is the neighborhood just east of Cerrito High School, that would be defined to go to Onza Trail School. The one thing, and again, is even our committee realizes the potential benefits of every thought process, and we also realize some of the concerns. And at first you would think, okay, well, let's move these 235 kids to the main campus. Well, what that does is when you change that geographical boundary from Onza to the main campus, you're also changing those Walden Grove High School students to Cerrito High School if they're going to supposed to go to the main campus now. And it doesn't surprise me that Mrs. Hill, as much as she loves kids, when I approached her with, what is your thought process? Maybe we could grandfather, those juniors and seniors of next year to stay at the school where they've gone and continue to go to Walden Grove. Her immediate response to me was, we'll open enroll all of them. So if they want to stay at Walden Grove High School, they can. Conditional, and they meet the requirements of open enrollment, they get themselves there. And we can always look at that possibility depending on the number of students for transportation. But she immediately said, I'll take all those students if they want to come. The net change for Sopri, there's 76 students that is down in that red triangle in the previous slide. The net change to the new school, again, after build out would be 853. And the net change for Onza in this particular case is minus 208. You'll see on the next previous slide where that actually gets them some space back. It's not just reducing class size if they're losing 90, but if you don't have a substantial number, in the upper hundreds or 200s, you might as well just leave Onza alone because, again, you're just reducing class size and not actually getting space back, if the board decides to do that. And I apologize, I know some of this is hard to read, but it was important because I wanted to put it all on one page so you could see what it meant. So if you ignore on the right-hand side, that's kind of the populations of all the schools if we take the SOPRI component. So if you concentrate right now on the left-hand side of your screen, at the very top in red it says at new school. You've already seen that. That was the previous slide where I talked about number of teachers needed, 683 kids at the new school. On the main campus again, if you move the red triangle out from Sarita Heights and you bring them to alleviate ONSA and bring them to the main campus, they would have 165, and 209 at SPS with a total population of 539. In green at SIS, you'd have 157, 200, and 177 for a total of 534 at SIS. And at the middle school, you'd have a total population of 622. I'm not going to get too much into the purple boxes, but again, divided by the number of students, you have that. And notice what it does to ONSA, and that's what I want to focus on this slide. Was in ONSA you'd have 81 in kindergarten all the way up to 210 in 8th grade, but it reduces ONSA to that 1,115. The most important thing of this is if you look at the purple numbers, again, just divided by the numbers that Scott Downs decided to divide by in his head, you have those class sizes. If you compare that to the current number of teachers that they have in each grade level, for instance, in kindergarten, the current teachers is 5 and they would only need 4. So they're actually gaining a classroom back. In first grade, 4 to 4, it's a wash. In second grade, they would go from 5 teachers to 3. Again, they're gaining 2 classrooms back. And so you can see all the way up to 5th grade that they would actually be gaining some classrooms back. They're not just reducing class size by reducing their school of 80 or 100. They're actually reducing it quite a bit and getting teachers out of workspaces. And the collective impact on staffing is at the bottom. Basically, with all of that, you need 2 less kindergarten teachers, again, from the main campus, SIS, middle school, and ONSA. You need 2 less kindergarten teachers, but you need 2 more in 4th grade. Again, a good ratio. On the right-hand side is if we were to move 76 kids down to SOPRI. You can see that the sizes and the population at SPS, SIS, and SMS drop, not SMS because no kindergarten, 6th through 8th grade would be going down to SOPRI, but you can see SPS goes from 539 to 512, SIS goes from 534 to 485, and again, the middle school stays at 622. What does it do to SOPRI's population? Their current population, again, moving all the students up to 1 grade level. In kindergarten, they would go from 16 to 23. In first grade would be the same thing, because again, we repeat what we did in kindergarten because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. In second grade, they would go from 21 students to 34, third grade, 30 to 43, etc. Again, dividing by Mr. Downs' purple numbers, again, that's just in his head. And again, you can see at the very bottom of your screen, you would be gaining 2 positions because you need 2 more in second grade, and you'd be losing 4 altogether. And again, that's just the numbers and the staffing that we'd be needing if we were to grow this. What would happen and what would be the feeder school pattern? Again, we don't want to change the enrollment and the feeder pattern going into our high schools, so the new pattern for the main campus track, all those students came off of the main campus so they would feed into Sarita High School. So again, nothing really changes except the new school in red would feed into Sarita High School and the off-campus track would not change. I think the most important thing to realize is there's a lot of different components of this. There's a lot more components, which is why we're here today to answer questions or to get more feedback. But all of these concepts are independent of each other. As we go through these, we can just move 683 kids to a new school, and we can even change the boundaries a little bit. We don't have to move kids to SOPRI. We can alleviate the overcrowding at ONSA and not do the SOPRI thing. So again, the 4 main topics of what we were presenting was that new school boundary, which you saw, which was 683 students, which is the center of Sarita. We have the new school boundaries, which is the La Vita and Entrada del Rio. We had allocated those appropriately to the main campus and to ONSA. And again, that's independent of everything. Increased SOPRI enrollment by 76 students, that's independent. And the alleviation of ONSA Trail School by 208 students, that's independent. So again, the board can ultimately decide to take all of these, 1 of these, 2 of these, and again, it's important that they're always interested in community feedback, which is the exact reason we're here today. So to conclude my presentation, if you're not sending your questions via Facebook or you're not going to ask a question now, I just want to talk about this now while I have your attention. If you visit our website, which is susd30.us, here's what the front page looks like. And right there on the front page, you have a 2017 boundary realignment. If you click on that link, it will give you every presentation we've done to date. Tonight's presentation will be on there tomorrow morning. And also on there, there's a form that you can fill out that will be emailed directly to me so we can get other feedback. If you don't want to submit a question through Facebook, or if you're not here tonight, you can certainly do that any time that you like, and we'll get that information as well. So with that, I know that was a lot of questions, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. And I know we have some committee members here as well that can also chime in and answer any questions that we have through Facebook or that is here today. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that come in. Amber, do we have any coming in?
Yeah, we do.
Okay, so the first question from our electronic Facebook is, how many months until the district will see new students? I think that's kind of a projection in what we're always trying to figure out in the crystal ball. The best way I can answer that is the previous slides where we talked about the new growth in our district. The neighborhood just south of the new school will be, they said those homes are coming anywhere in the next 5 years, so I would say 5 years. The neighborhood just east of Sarita High School, I'm told they're going to be building their model home relatively quickly, so we'll start seeing new students there, if that's what new students means. And then right behind Safari Park in Chata del Rio, I would say we start seeing homes coming in there probably within 6 months, and students maybe in 8-9 months. I'm not really sure. So again, it's that crystal ball, which is hard. Next question is the projected rate of completion for the new homes. Again, kind of just answered that, and unfortunately we don't have control over that as a school district. We can only get our information from Rancho Sarita and any current home builders. We have a third question that is coming in as well from Facebook. It says, how does this alleviate overcrowding at SMS? Hopefully, if I can go back a little bit, we have a lot of teachers who are on 6/5, which means teachers teach on their planning period instead of hiring somebody new. If you were to look at least this slide, middle school would be going to 622, and I believe their current enrollment is 750, 730. 830-ish. So you can see there's at least 200 kids drawn, because part of that 683 students to the new school includes students from the middle school. So there would be at least a 200 student reduction at the middle school. So that was a good question. That wasn't very necessarily apparent because I didn't show the enrollment at the middle school beforehand. And I apologize about that. But it would reduce the middle school by about 200 students.
Hey Scott, the two different plans that are on the screen right now, you talked about the different independence living parts. Which parts does each side assume? Like, the left side assumes what is happening, the right side assumes what is happening.
Good question, and if you're on Facebook, I'll repeat the question so you can hear it. The question was on this slide, what is the difference between the two sides and what does it assume? On the left-hand side of your screen assumes that the boundary for the new school is as defined, and those 683 students comes from the main campus. It also assumes that the red neighborhood off to the far east in Sarita Heights would come from Anza to the main campus. And it does not assume that kids are going to Sobri. The only difference on the right-hand side of your screen is those are the new numbers if we move the 76 kids down to Sobri. Good question. And I'll go back to the boundary just because I think that's again the main drawing right now, at least for the school, for the Ks. Question is, will additional staff be hired at Sobri? I have not analyzed the number of instructional aides, but we do have a ratio on that. Certainly we'll look at all schools and figure out proportionally what will happen. Also, if students I just talked about teachers, but even when we're moving students from the main campus to the new school, we will probably be moving some instructional aides as well. We won't be moving office staff because you still need office staff, you still need a nurse, but some of those support staff would be moving as well. So at least at Sobry, in this, at least for teachers, it looks like we would be needing at least one more teacher, 1-1, 2-2. In fourth grade, we would need another teacher in fourth grade. So for sure, I would say we need one more teacher, and certainly we'd be looking at additional support staff. Question in our audience?
And the map, if you can go back to the map, can you read the street north and south where the map was? There it is. Can you
Okay.
read what street is
Yeah.
that?
The best way, instead of actually reading streets, the best way to describe this is every student south of Sarita Road,
South of, okay.
but north of Duval Mine Road.
Okay.
So the little slant at the bottom before the red line to Sobry, that's basically everyone, the north side of Duval Mine, but everyone south of Sarita. Basically entails everybody in there. And again, it leaves space at the new school for that new neighborhood coming in just south of the annex.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, somebody from Facebook asked if we would go back to the bus ride slide. And this information came from our Director of Transportation. I think it was the other way, I apologize. So here's the bus ride set, and basically what my question to the Director of Transportation, Mr. Mike Fiesler, was, what is the longest amount of time that any student spends on the bus from the furthest point that goes to that destination with travel time, with the bus stops? And the numbers that he gave me from Los Arroyos to the main campus was about 18 minutes. McGee Ranch to the main campus, basically, SPS was 25 minutes. The furthest stop at Rancho Sarita, which I'm assuming is the furthest north, with the number of bus stops they have, and then coming through Rancho Sarita was 37. And then the red triangle, which is Rancho Abrego, possibly going to Sobry, our Director of Transportation has estimated that at 35 minutes. And I don't know if he took a stopwatch on that or he just knows basic travel times, but those were the numbers that he gave us. Good question from Facebook. It says, will there be team sports for the new middle schoolers at the new school? Our board has always been committed to try to give the same experience to every student, regardless of the school that they go to. So I can say, without hesitation, yes. As the new school opens, it might look a little bit different. As you look at the middle school component of the new school, they might have only 300 students. So the ability to put effective and good teams together might look a little different, and we want them to make sure that they're successful. So we're certainly going to have sports, and I don't know what I mean by say they might look a little bit different, but we are certainly going to make sure that they have the experiences that every other middle school student has. Any other questions from the audience here or on Facebook? Yep.
Do we have a time frame that the school board, that we think the school board will vote which month we vote on this?
I have not spoken with the school board to determine their timeline. From an HR director standpoint, I would love if the school board was to vote on a school boundary in December. Depending on the feedback that we get tonight, our committee might have a lot of work if a lot of things come in over the internet and that email address. We'll have a lot of things to look at because our goal as a committee is to try to give as much information to my boss, Dr. Valenzuela, so he in turn can give a recommendation with some possible options to the school board. Without talking to the school board myself, they might come back and say, we're not interested at all in Sobry, or maybe we want to put a little bit more students in Sobry. So, with the best possible scenario, again, with my HR hat on, it would be nice if we were to conclude this process by December so we can start on the staffing process and everything that happens afterwards. Good question. Okay, with that again, we have one more question in the audience.
Someone had asked me how this affects students in extended resource or what used to be long project inspired program.
Good question. Sometimes you can't analyze everything, but I did analyze that before our committee even started. With the number of students in our Project Inspire program currently, and the number of teachers that would be needed if we split them up, right now it is recommended due to the size of the new school, space not available at the new school, and extra staff needed to spread those students out, that Project Inspire would continue to be at the main campus for now. Not that we wouldn't change it in the future, but we thought essence for now it would stay at the main campus. Yes?
Can you go back to the slide that showed the breakdown of the high schools?
The breakdown of the high schools,
The boundaries? Yeah, not the boundaries,
the alleviation of the tracks. Hope I'm going in the right direction. Is it the other way? Talking about this one?
Yes.
Basically, again, what this slide articulates is that since the new school, the 683 students would be coming from the main campus, we're not wanting to change the rate at which we're occupying our high schools. So since those 683 kids came from the main campus, they would still be feeding into Sarita High School. From Facebook, can you clarify the high school boundaries? The only thing, if again, this is just a proposal, nothing would change for sure. The only thing that would change for high school boundaries would be this red area, which is Sarita Heights. This is a Walden Grove neighborhood that would turn to Sarita High School. And again, our committee has already realized, if you haven't yet, that, oh my goodness, these students are right underneath Walden Grove High School. Why would you send them to Sarita High School? And this will be a tough decision for our governing board, is if we're going to alleviate Anza, and hopefully I've clarified that, the only thing you can do to really alleviate Anza is to pick this neighborhood. Picking anything in Rancho is very difficult because then you're affecting a lot of elementary at Cabo View Elementary School. If you were to pick another neighborhood, then you're picking kids even closer to Anza, which is a walking school, and most kids probably get bused, or parents. But it's a walking school. So we realize that this will be changing. So the only change, if this was to go, would be that this area for high school students, and the high school boundaries would change from Walden Grove High School to Sarita High School. And again, Principal Hill at Walden Grove High School already said that she would take the current 120 students that are 9th through 11th grade and keep them as 10th through 12th graders. Any new students would go to Sarita High School. Yes?
I don't think it is necessarily clear that this includes all of the K-8 students as well.
Okay, yeah.
This slide doesn't mention-
So let me clarify just, that's a good point. So every student in this area, this boundary, this neighborhood, would be kindergarten through 12th grade main campus. So these kindergarten through 8th grade students in the red area would be main campus. And the high school, this would be a SHS high school area. However, Teresa Hill said that she would keep every single student if they wanted to continue on open enrollment, contingent that they met the definition and enrollment procedures for those.
So it's everything east of,
Basically everything east of FICO.
north and south.
Yeah. And there's not really, if you look at north of Sarita Road, I think there's like 2 houses out there, but any other questions? And again, I just want to reiterate as we close that nothing is final. This is just a dipstick on our community to understand what we're thinking, some of the pros and cons, and even our own committee members realize some of the positive things about what we're presenting and some of the concerns. And again, it will be very difficult for our board to determine, again, balancing some of those principles about what they want to do. And again, it's very important as part of this process that, again, if you didn't ask a question tonight, but if you have any type of thought process or any ideas that we haven't thought of, this is not in stone. These are just proposals. And again, all of these are independent of each other. We can merely decide just to move the 683 kids to the new school, and we're done. We can move kids to Sopry. We can move more kids to Sopry. We don't have to move any kids to Sopry. Again, all of these things, and I know our board would like to hear from our committee in terms of what we got from community and what the feedback was. So if there's not any more questions, I'd like to conclude the evening. And again, please visit our website if you have not asked a question here but like to give us feedback. So thank you for joining us. I appreciate the people in the audience and on Facebook. So with that, I would wish everyone a good night.